Nice to be here in person. Thank you for coming, and thank you everyone on Zoom too for being here, for joining this afternoon, so that we can practice together. So we can practice our meditation practice, our practice of present awareness, of active connection. A valuable time that we set aside or carve out in our busy days and busy weeks in order to reset, perhaps to come back to what is most essential, what is most fundamental in our experience as human beings. Of course, we sure do gather a lot of complications, challenges, things to do, the ever-growing, the to-do list that never ends. And so to have some time that we can simply and directly be quiet, still, peaceful, together in a supportive environment with a common positive intention, that helps to foster that peacefulness and freedom, and to realize the possibilities of the limitless possibilities of meditation. So thank you again, choosing to share your time in this way. So let's do our best to make the most of the time, to use the time well, to sit well. And we can begin to ready the body and the mind for our sitting practice now. As usual, we'll shortly begin with our 30-minute sitting period, which is a good length of time. 10 breaths. That's a good amount of time too. But 30 minutes is a length of time which really allows the body to sit all of the way down, and the mind to cease chasing after objects of mind, to also for the mind then to begin to settle. Usually the body sits first, and then it brings the mind along with a little bit of time. So if we get our bodies set for sitting, then the mind follows along. So let's have a good contact with the ground, whether we're sitting in a chair here in person, or in a chair at home, or if you're at home on the ground. However your body is in contact with the ground, feel that connection, and know that the whole earth is holding us up here. It's wherever we're sat, wherever we are, the earth is holding us up, so we can feel our connection with the earth wherever we are. And then with a good base, the feet even and in contact, and let's help get a straight back, whatever that is for us. We can have a crown of our head reaching up towards ceiling or sky. That's something that we can aim for without forcing, but just a reaching up with immense soft shoulders. And so we can relax the shoulders, just roll those back, and unclench hands and feet, soften the brow of the face, and bring attention to our breathing, and begin a deeper breath practice that draws in the inhalation long and deep, helping to straighten the back without any forcing or straining. And then with a good full long exhalation, that lets the day go, lets the complications, for anything that we might be concerned with. This is a time to set concerns aside. Don't worry, they'll be there to get back to, most likely. But we can set concerns aside and stay with this longer breathing as we settle in. So breath awareness is our guide and an object of focus for the mind. If we wander away into daydream or thinking about this and that, then let's interrupt that tendency with breath awareness. But as we become established in our breathing and we can follow the inhalations and exhalations, let's also sit openly, listening to sound and silence with same attention, eyes a little open. Just direct experience with however this mystery shows up right now. That's all we need to do. Just be directly in contact with. Let's feel the support of knowing that we sit together as a community and as a sangha, linked together through space and time, however that all works. We're all here, sitting alongside one another. Let's rest in this posture and this awareness and enjoy our practice. We can follow the sound of the bell into silence. Take a moment to stand and stretch if you would like, or take a drink of water, just for a minute or so, stretch break, and then we'll continue. Gosh, once you sit for 30 minutes, there isn't much to say. It was that's the dilemma. So I was a little curious. I look up and see the screen here. It's reminds me of when I catch myself on a security camera. You know, you're like kind of checking out, and then you look up and you're like, "What?" I'm not taking anything really. It's nice there's so many people here in person today. That's we have this. It's always a mixed blessing with hybrid format in my. It's a lot of work. A lot of it falls to Adrian too. So we all do appreciate their efforts in setting all of this up. And thank you. And the other many hands that have worked together. Some here, some on Zoom, and some not actively involved now, and yet it's been a collective effort for the organization, the group, these many years, all to foster the opportunity that we can sit in silence and quiet for a period of time. But it's this active practice of sitting is so powerful, and this is, although I've said it before, I mean it sincerely, that this is a special community. Yushin and I, about to drive down the mountain, start to get ready to head down the hill. It never feels like a chore. It never feels like It always feels like it's a good energy. It's a positive experience. And this week, so it falls to me to say something on the topic of liberation. Right? I think we have that topic for these 3 weeks, and this is the middle meeting on this topic of liberation. Such quite a weighty word, that one, liberation. Right? It's there's a lot of meaning that can. A lot of ways that we can look through the lens of that single word. It can mean many different things. If we take it from the standpoint of the Buddha, of course, and the Buddha's experience, I was just reading what we put out there as the short text introducing this series that brings in the Buddha's teaching as liberation from samsara, liberation from the difficulties, the experience of living as a human being in the world. Whether is liberation possible? You're also asked, or is it only something that can come from hard effort and practice? Effort and practice is very variable and unique to each one of us. For myself, I feel the important thing is to practice in accord with your own need and aspiration. Right? Practice can mean means different things to different people at different times in their life. Even it's not something that can really pin down. There isn't a standard of practice that we should all be matching. The only standard of practice is your own inner voice or call to an activity, a spiritual activity like meditation. To practice in accord with that. Usually for those that come to meditation practice, there is a questioning, or there is an itch, perhaps. There is a wanting to know something deeper, or to return to being whole. It can be many different things. Of course, for the Buddha, he had a major itch, and that drove him in his life, to be liberated from the human condition, to see if that was possible to do. It's had those marks of existence, seeing deeply into impermanence, experiencing suffering, and then becoming deeply involved in practices in an effort to alleviate that suffering. And meditation, of course, was a well practice at that period of time. Even then, 2,500 years ago in northern India, the Buddha became very accomplished at meditation. And yet all his accomplishment in pursuit of liberation led to enormous failure, ironically. It's like, so to become the best meditator and the leading ascetic of the day, which is these ascetic practices where people would reduce their consumption of food to the point of coming near to death. It was understood, there was a belief at that time that the more that you weakened the body, the stronger the spiritual aspect had become. So the Buddha walked a very fine line in those practices and became apparently incredibly emaciated and weakened in this pursuing this goal of liberation from the human condition, pushing themselves to ever greater extremities, until it's said eventually he fell in a river and would have drowned if he had not been rescued by a Sujata who was caring for, was a cowherder, pulled him from the river, gave him some milk and rice, and recovered his strength. And that was really, you can imagine, it's a nice story. You imagine, okay, flailing around in the river, then got rescued, and a nice bowl of rice and milk. But I'm sure it wasn't a pretty picture, to nearly drown and then to be rescued, which at that time was he had been a prince or a high, like a prince of a warrior caste at that time, someone powerful. And then through all of these austerities and giving away a kingdom and leaving a family, in this struggle to realize liberation in spiritual practices, eventually becomes so weak and falls in the river and is rescued by, at that time, perceived as a low caste person, and saved. And that's that. The failure of realizing all of this spirit, all of these practices of austerities and everything that had been given up, had brought him no closer to liberation. And at that time, that's when the Buddha decides to sit under the what would become known as the Bodhi tree. It could be any kind of tree, but a good leafy tree that offered some shade. I was reminded by that. I was just parking in the lot here. It's just like, where's the Bodhi tree at? It's like the one with the shade, where all you see a few vehicles and everyone's seeking a little shade. It's grateful. Like we're supported. Like I said at the beginning, supported in the meditation by the earth holding us up, and then supported by the shade of a tree that offers it freely without needing any payment or reward. It just offers shade. So we can park there and come in the hall here. Then the Buddha parked himself under the Bodhi tree and just sat. And then experienced something of liberation. Now, in the Buddhist tradition, this can be taken in different ways in different traditions. In the Theravadan tradition, the older traditions, Nirvana, liberation from samsara, involves, the actual word means extinction. Nirvana. It means to be a non-returner, to not come back to the endless cycle of rebirth. It's understood in that system. There's something about that that I never really, in my own practice, took to very much. It has a feeling of kind of stop the world, I want to get off. Like there's like to try and escape the human, to escape the human condition. Of course, this is the way that that it may be commented on now, and that's my just my personal opinion on it. I don't mean to demean that tradition of that way, but nirvana can be taken that way, or liberation, to escape causality, to escape cause and effect. So now in the Zen school, we look at perhaps this liberation somewhat differently. It's really it is still liberation from samsara, or liberation from suffering, but perhaps we're arrogant enough to want to realize and experience that now, to experience that liberation right now. But also the Buddha, upon seeing the morning star, it is said became enlightened. Buddha became enlightened. That is also, there is that liberation there. There was an experience of liberation for the Buddha which was deep and powerful enough to still resonate several thousand years later, and to have reached thousands and millions of people. A powerful realization. And that, what is that? Realization, to see deeply the nature of reality, to be completely realistic. Right? This is our practice of meditation, is a practice of being realistic, like being aligned with reality as it is. The Buddha ultimately, in that experience, became so closely aligned with reality that there's no longer the Buddha and reality. There's just the experience of thusness. The Buddha seeing the morning star is a subject-object duality. The morning star seeing the Buddha is turned over, which is a cool trick, but it's still a subject-object duality. But Buddha's experience of liberation there is when that subject-object duality disappears. Now, in looking into, which is fine to talk about conceptually, right? We can say that. Okay, well, that's what that is, when duality falls off and then non-duality. So words are clumsy, and they're involved in, there's always a split there, there's always a gap. Words should only ever be taken as pointers. Pointers in a way that it reminds us, words used well can remind us of the innate experience that we already are, the truth that is already here, that sometimes goes unrecognized or unrealized. And words can help always remind and point back, this experience now, this one here, not someone else, not somewhere else. This right now, what is this right now? Always pointing back to this. I was looking up around this topic of liberation and found a teaching of Thich Nhat Hanh's, which I wasn't familiar with, and I appreciate more and more the teachings of Thich Nhat Hanh in the way that he could speak from different joined traditions, in a sense. Right? To come from Zen in a different lens for his practice. Still the withering directness of Zen, very, very intimate and pointing right at it was Zen, but also informed by a practice of a true Buddhist practice. You know, somebody who also like strongly practiced the precepts, the conduct, and the way of living as a monk. Right, so it's kind of like the whole package in that way. And he had the teaching of the liberation, the free gates of liberation, right, which builds on top of the three marks of existence. The three marks of existence that the Buddha pointed out: impermanence, suffering, non-self. Right? Seeing deeply, we look at this world, we can see it as clearly everything that appears in form is impermanent. It is not Saturday anymore. We're on Sunday. It's soon going to be Monday. Right? Maybe too soon for many of you. I don't know. Maybe that's right. But there is we can see impermanence in all things. That is clear. Right? Impermanence. And suffering, a mark of existence. There is the fact of suffering. Right? There is the fact of like living a human experience, a human life. There is always there's always some dissatisfaction or frustration. There's always going to be difficulty. Right? Even when things are going, I'm always suspicious when things are going really well. You know, it's like I feel a little uncomfortable, like something's coming, like you got to look up or look around corners if things are going just right, because that's usually a sign that something's coming. But there's always in the human, like in our lives, right? So there is impermanence. Clearly, there is suffering. Not always great suffering, although there is clearly great suffering in the world. Right? So we don't have to look far from our own doorstep for that if it's not inside the room. So there is suffering. But there's also the suffering that is just for background kind of petty frustration, you know, the things that are never just quite right. You know, you set up something, you know, you go to maybe you book a fancy restaurant, you've been looking forward to it for a month, and, you know, everything's right, and you go there, and it's just like they don't have what you want, or the server's not very good. There's always like life is just full of these like small sufferings and large sufferings. And then this third mark of existence, non-self, is what Thich Nhat Hanh brought up as the first gate of liberation. Non-self, not self. This is the crux, turning point in the exploration of meditation and Buddhism. What is the self? That question, that koan lasts a lifetime. What is the self? What is the nature of self? And what is non-self? You know, the default position for most human beings, the self is something fixed, enduring, the feeling of separation, standing alone in a world of things, navigating the world. That is our dualistic consciousness, the way that we're wired to navigate reality. Other things, animals, trees, the sky, don't seem to have this way of organizing the world. But who knows? But they don't seem to. It doesn't seem to be dualistic. So that dualistic understanding is something, if not unique to humans, is a major way that we operate. It's a wonderful way to navigate the world. We become the dominant species on this earth, for good or for bad, with this dualistic consciousness. But it has a big shadow in that it separates things, and we're able to know our own impermanence too. This is like the very drive for the Buddha. Right? But when we look into our lives, if we look with depth and with focus, and as meditators, that's our practice. Right? So many people, if you don't meditate or really look into this, you just kind of don't worry about it or don't think about it much, apart from it when it comes up in life. Or we have a story or a belief system or something which we plug into, that's enough. For many people, that's the way. right? But for practitioners of Buddhism, or if we don't identify as a Buddhist, just as a meditator, then you're involved in the business of what is the self. You're looking at this experience of this now as it appears. Now, when we look at this one, you can see that this one is not so easy to pin down or to grasp or to know. Now, we build this self, we have this me identity, which is name, history, things, a collection of things that have happened, relationships to other people of things, and there's an indistinct sense of something fixed or living there at the center. But in meditation, in our practice, when you look in, you see that you can't find anyone home. There's nothing here to find that's fixed. And the self is different every day. Like really different every day. Different things have happened. We're a day older, relationships change, things change. You can't fix this one. And we see into that in ways which are shallow and deep. The Buddha was somebody who saw into it very, very deeply. Deeply enough to see the truth of all things, the whole universe appearing at once, this whole reality. Everything is completely and inexorably connected to everything else all of the time. The self is not a thing, but the self rather is a living process. A living process appearing now as each one of us, whether here or whether online, in the same way that the clouds and the trees and penguins or whatever else appear. I don't know why penguins, but just as everything else all just appears at once as this whole living process. This is the realization, again, shallow or deep, of non-self, not self, not there is no self, because if there is no self, I've been living an incredible illusion for 50 years, because it really feels like there's a me here. The Jokai or David is here all of this time, right? But what is the nature of that one? If you can look into this, we see it's not fixed. It only exists as a part of the entire whole. So this is the revolution of Buddhist realization, non-self, and the starting point for, in this case, Thich Nhat Hanh's comment on the gates of liberation, the starting point, the relief of seeing, wow, I don't stand alone in this world of things, but rather this one here is the whole, is never separated from the whole, and all things are together appearing as this whole, and everything comes and goes in the appearance of form, right? Which is an extraordinary thing. We can always think about our own life or our own death or our own passing or those things, and yet you look into the world, the universe, everything is that way. Nothing lasts, right? The great truth of Buddhism, there is nothing permanent in form, right? I remember reading that Stephen Hawking, the famous physicist, right? It's like, I think he won the Nobel Prize, but he actually won it for his work on black holes, right? For what we call Hawking radiation now. He worked out theoretically that black holes eventually die. Over eons of time, over billions of years, even these supermassive like black holes, they just radiation through quantum effects, they disappear. It takes billions of years, but even black holes have to say goodbye at some point. There's nothing in this universe that lasts as form. And yet in its essence, this now, so we don't distance it, this present experience is eternally this. What an extraordinary fact that is, that this is this. What does that mean? I don't know, right? I don't know. That's the I. The I doesn't know. So we look at, no self. And the second one, signlessness. That's an interesting word that Thich Nhat Hanh chose there, or how that's translated. Signlessness. The form or outer appearance of things, their sign can deceive us. A cloud looks like a cloud, but afterwards it's rain, and then the rain turns to the plants. Right? Signlessness. Or you could look at that in labels. So we have such an attachment as human beings to knowing. That's really bound up with that, the way that we navigate reality, to know. Right? It's a way to stay safe and to carry the gene pool forward. However, like evolution, we like to know. Right? You need to know things, like to fix in that way. But anything that we label, that's not it. That doesn't describe what that is really. It's always like a temporary label for a process which is undergoing change, either swiftly or slowly. Right? So you can give somebody a name, but that never really reaches that person. You can know a person, but you never really know them completely. Even you never know. You look at your own self. It's just like I don't know this one completely. Never mind anybody else. So anything that we can fix or know or put a label on, that's not. If we fix, it's always dangerous to fix that as a hard and fast fact. That's what that is. I know what that is now. Done. Ticked. Boxed off. Filed. I've got that down. No, it's never that way. Anything that we can put a sign on and a label on is at best just a temporary expedient, just a little sticky note that falls off when the glue dries out, right? And then it's gone. So he talks about this as a gate of liberation. Just know it in the heart, know it in the bones, that there's nothing fixed in reality. So we can be cautious about drawing knowledge or conclusions about anything at all. When we experience and realize in that way, there's a lot more freedom, there's a lot more maybe, there's a lot more capacity for to let new information come in, to not to be fixed. So non-self and signlessness. You see, this self isn't fixed and separate here, and nothing else that's perceived is fixed and separate here. And then he brings in the third one, the gate, aimlessness. Yeah, I read this, I'm like, I love this, as a practice, aimlessness. Like what are we trying to accomplish in practice or accomplish in meditation? As human beings, often we're consumed with an aim to get something, to be something, to achieve something. And of course, when we're navigating a world of form, we need to pay the rent and buy the groceries. So we've got to have aims. We've got to have aims. But aims are always dangerous if those aims become our whole raison d'etre, and if we don't succeed at our aims, then we have failed, there's a problem. Like it's like, how do we, and those aims can also become like addicting, like we're always looking for the next thing, or the next thing to assuage or to make us happy. So he talks here about aimlessness. Yes, I was reflecting on just in sitting. Like I love to sit for 30 minutes here, particularly you come here and you say hello and we greet one another and we're going to introduce what we're going to do, although we all know what we're doing already, and go over the few instructions for sitting. But then we just get on with sitting. Now for me, it's like the meditation became much easier once I gave up on it. Like when I stopped trying to do anything. When I just gave up on meditation. Which sounds maybe a little paradoxical. Right? It's like we learn the practice, we learn how to sit still and quiet and have some concentration, some breath work, establish ourselves as being present. But then if we're aiming for something, aiming to be peaceful or aiming for some enlightenment or some more understanding or aiming to get away from the mind that's always busy with things or aiming anywhere at all, that then just becomes difficult. Then meditation's like work. I don't like to sit. I don't. I like to look up stuff on my phone. That's what I like to do. I like to go on Wikipedia ramblings or whatever, or check this or do these things, and I've got lots of things to do anyway. So I like to do things. I don't like to sit, but that's for I. Right? That's a sense of me self that is never satisfied, that is always aiming and looking for something. It's better when meditating is forget about I. Just forget the I. That's for I doesn't like to sit, but that's not relevant. That's just sitting. You just give up on meditation or trying to aim towards something and be aimless. Have no business, have nothing to be involved in or to need to do, nothing to be let go of and nothing to be achieved. That's like a radical, just a unilateral, just declare a unilateral peace and sit aimlessly. Then it's just sitting. Then it's timeless. Then it doesn't matter if it's 5 minutes, 20 minutes. I look up because, I've got to keep an eye on the time now and see how far it's gone. And I look up and I'll be like, oh, it's been sitting for 10 minutes. You go back to sitting. And then you look up and you just, whoa, 30 minutes has gone. I got to hit the bell. But really, it doesn't matter. It's better to just let that go. Just sit and be aimless. The more that this is realized in meditation, the more you can really just sit down and allow this to be as this is without I being in the middle, trying to organize it or trying to do something with it, then practice becomes much more straightforward. It's just sitting. And then when we're not sitting and we get up, it's just whatever that activity is. And each one of us has lived our life to this point, right? Navigating this world as this one, as this part of this whole. But as human beings, we tend to micromanage, hold the steering wheel a little too tight, over-direct the performance, add too much, aim for this and that. But we can bring this realization of stillness, of presence, of aimlessness, and let that flow into the activities of our day. It doesn't mean, aimlessness doesn't mean, okay, gas light came on, but I have no aim to get gas, although you may save significant amounts of money, not getting gas, I guess that's not the best example. But aimlessness is like when it's time to gas up the car or plug the car in and charge the battery, then that's what's taken care of. When it's time to eat, then the meal's prepared, or we go out, or it's DoorDash, or whatever it is, whatever's appropriate, then it's just eating, then it's just clearing up. There's ancient Zen wisdom that describes Zen as chopping wood and carrying water. But our days are that way too. They may appear more complicated in a modern context, but our days are chopping wood and carrying water. Answering emails and taking calls, whatever that may be. So we can find, like, again, liberation. Sure, we can go on a quest to escape the human condition. But what the real shortcut to escaping the human condition is to be so fully involved and intimate with your human life, not looking for something else, that you escape that way. Be free where you appear. Be free now, as we are. And a mind that is still, that is present, the practices is present, that is in contact like we are now, that is a mind, that is an expression, that is an experience that we share. We share with one another, and we share with our sphere, with our friends, with our family, with those around. And that's encouraging. It's encouraging to others. But again, to rewind to the start, for each one of us in practice, I really encourage everyone, practice in the way that is in accord with your own heart's wish for practice, not compared to anyone or anything else's standard. Whether that's to sit each day for 5 minutes or for 30 minutes or for an hour, to practice daily, to read, to listen to talks, to read books, like whatever that may be. Just continue, like let's open up to that and explore. But ultimately, practice is something that is 24 hours a day, seven days, always open, 365. There's no escape from practice. The practice of this experience now. And if we can really align as this experience as it appears, then there's really nothing else to do. There's nothing else to do. There's nothing else to aim for. Anyway, I'd like to open it up for if anyone has a question or a comment on this, on liberation or anything else, then please go for it. Whether here in the room or online. Because again, it's such a powerful word. And it can go in many different directions. But I thought today I would bring it out from it's the only way I can bring it out is how I understand it. Okay. Thank you, everyone. We'll leave it there for today. Thank you, everyone who attended online. And again, thank you all for being here.